In numbers of cases, people require a long rest after their dissolution. They may be awake during the whole of this period of rest, and those in attendance have to be a storehouse of information. The attention of such souls is usually about equally divided between the spirit world and the earth world. It requires a high proportion of general spirit world knowledge, as well as tactfulness and discretion upon the part of all the nurses and doctors. By making mention of any particular occupation, I do so entirely without prejudice to any other, and not because those which we have discussed have any preeminence over others. One or two of them have been chosen to present to you because they have the appearance of being so very material, and to point what I have tried to demonstrate repeatedly before, that we are living in a practical spirit world where we are busy upon our own individual and useful task, and that we are not spending the whole of our spirit life in a high state of religiosity, nor perpetually absorbed in pious meditation. But what of the person who has never done a useful thing during his earth life? All I can say is that such a person will not find himself in these realms until he has worked his way here. Entrance is by service alone. To make a complete list of all spirit occupations would take a very large volume to do so, for they seem to be inexhaustible. Indeed, my mind becomes almost numbed at the thought of their countless number, and of my inability to do justice to so vast a subject. In the scientific sphere of labor alone, thousands upon thousands of people are happily employed, whether it be upon probing the secrets of the earth plane or in investigating those of the spirit world. Science and engineering being closely allied in the spirit world, far-reaching discoveries are constantly being made, and inventions are ever being perfected. These inventions are not for us, but for you, when the time is ripe, and that is not yet. The earth world has given a poor exhibition of what has been sent through it from the spirit world, by putting to base uses what has been given it for its benefit. Man has exercised his own free will, but he has been exercising it in a direction that ultimately brings destruction. The mind of man is but in its infancy, and an infant becomes dangerous when he has free use of that which can destroy. Hence, much is held back from the world, the earth world, until man has reached a higher state of development. That day will assuredly arrive, and a torrent of new inventions will come pouring through from the spirit world to your world. In the meantime, the work goes on, research, investigation, discovery, and invention, and it is work that absorbs great hosts of interested people, and provides them with useful employment in their spirit life. Nothing ever disturbs the ordered routine of our work. While the work continues, we may be retiring from it for a space, either to rest or to follow some other line of endeavor. We have no disputes, no domestic upheavals, no rivalries that produce dissatisfaction and unpleasantness. We have no discontented folk. We may have the urge to be doing something of greater moment, but that is not discontent, but the prompting from within that denotes the steps of our spiritual progression. The humblest of us is made to feel that whatever his work, however insignificant it may appear beside other and seemingly greater tasks, he is performing something vital and significant that will bring with it its own inevitable reward, that none can withhold from us, none can take away. In the spirit world, to work is to be profoundly happy, for the many reasons that I have given you. There is none here who would not endorse my words wholeheartedly and unreservedly. Famous people. To leave the earth world and to take up permanent residence in the spirit world is not such a personal upheaval as some people might be disposed to imagine. It is true that for a great many, all earthly ties are severed, but when we pass into the spirit world, we meet again those of our relatives and friends who have passed over before us. In this respect, we start a fresh period in our lives, apart altogether from the new life that begins with our entry into the world of spirit. The meetings with relations and friends are something that must be experienced in order to grasp the full significance and joy of reunion. Such meetings will only take place where there is mutual sympathy and affection. We will not, for the moment, consider any other. These gatherings will continue for some while after the arrival of the new resident. It is natural that in the novelty both of surroundings and condition, some time should be spent in a grand exchange of news and in bearing for all that has transpired in the spirit lives of those who have predeceased us. Eventually, that time will come when the newly arrived individual will begin to consider what is to be done with his spirit life. Now, it might be said that with most of us on the earth plane, we have a twofold existence: our home life and the life connected with our business or our occupation. In the latter, we associate perhaps with an entirely different group of people. It is therefore in the natural order of things here in spirit that much the same state of things should also exist. The scientist, for example, will meet first of all his own family connections. When the question of work is broached, he will find himself among his old colleagues who have passed into the spirit world before him, and he will again feel more than at home, and he will be more than overjoyed at the prospect of the scientific research that stretches before him. It is the same with the musician, the painter, the author, the engineer, the doctor, the gardener, the stonemason, or the man who weaves carpets in a factory, to mention but a fraction of the many occupations both of the earth and spirit worlds. It will be seen from this that the question which puzzles most folk, namely, what becomes of the famous people in spirit world, practically answers itself. Fame in the spirit world is vastly different from fame in the earth world. Spiritual fame carries with it distinctions of a very different order from the earthly distinctions, and it is gained one way only, in service to others. It sounds almost too simple to be feasible, but such is the case, and nothing will alter it. When the earthly famous will reside in the realms of light immediately after their dissolution remains, whether the earthly famous will reside in the realms of light immediately after their dissolution remains with themselves. The law applies to all, irrespective of earthly position. A certain inquisitiveness concerning the general fate of those well known upon the earth plane is possessed by most people who are in their early days of psychic study. The mere fact of their being well known is sufficient, but none calls forth more curiosity than the historically famous people. Where are they? The masters in all branches of earthly endeavor, the names that are familiar in the history books. They must be somewhere, most certainly they are, a good number of them to be found in the dark realms, where they have been living for countless centuries, and they are more likely so to continue for more countless centuries. Others are in those exalted realms of light and beauty, where their noble lives upon earth have found their just reward. But there are many, a great many, who will find themselves within these realms, whereof I have tried to give you some account. I cannot do better than give you an example, of which for our present purpose I have gathered a few details. It concerns the passing into the spirit world of a royal personage. I take this case because, although an extreme one, it demonstrates more clearly than any other the principles that govern life in general in the spirit world. In this particular case, we knew beforehand that this personage was about to come to the spirit world. His own countrymen were naturally interested in what was about to take place. His own family, in common with any other family here, were ready and awaiting his arrival. A short illness was the occasion of his passing here, and as soon as dissolution had taken place, he was taken to the home of his mother, who had everything in readiness for him. The home is an inconspicuous one, similar, broadly speaking, to others hereabout. The news had spread that he had at last arrived. There was no universal rejoicing such as might take place upon the earth plane following a safe homecoming, but happiness was felt for all those who were directly concerned with the arrival in the spirit world of this well-known and much-loved figure. And there he remained for a time, enjoying a seclusion and freedom of action and a simplicity of life that had been denied him upon the earth plane. He needed rest after his active life and the illness that terminated its earthly span. Numbers of people who had formed part of his official circle as well as his private circle, and who had passed on before him, had called to inquire after him, but they had not seen him as yet. There had been, of course, a grand family reunion, and as soon as he had rested sufficiently, he issued forth to see the wonders of his new life. He retained to a noticeable extent his former and usual personal appearance. The signs of illness and bodily and mental fatigue had disappeared, and he looked some years younger. The rest had achieved its purpose as unfailingly as usual. As he walked abroad, he was recognized for what he had been, and respected for it, but he was still more honored and respected and loved for what he now was. Now you may think that as soon as he met and mingled with his own countrymen, the latter would have shown some embarrassment perhaps, and exhibited a general air of diffidence, such as they would have done perforce upon the earth plane. But during that period of recuperation much had been explained to him of the conditions of life in the spirit world, its methods, its laws, and its pleasant customs. Such revelations had filled him with happiness, and he knew that as soon as he left the seclusion of his mother's house to venture abroad, he could do so with a freedom that is only to be found in spirit lands, where the inhabitants would regard him in the light in which he would wish to be regarded, that of a plain man desirous of joining with his fellow beings in their happiness and their rejoicings. He knew that he would be treated as one of themselves. When, therefore, in company with members of his family, he walked through these realms on the voyage of discovery, that is such a common sight among the newly arrived, he did not experience in himself or cause in others any feelings of mental discomfort. No one referred to his earthly position, unless he himself broached the subject, and then there was no suspicion or inquisitiveness or ignorant curiosity. You may think that one who has occupied so elevated a position upon the earth plane would engender in the minds of others here thoughts of sympathy with such a change of relative position that had taken place. But no such feelings of sympathy are ever wished for, nor extended in these realms, in such cases, for the very good reason that the occasion for them never arises. We have left our earthly importance behind us. We do not refer to it except to show by our own experience to others still incarnate just what to avoid. We do not revive our memories for the purpose of self-glorification or to impress our hearers. Indeed, they would not be in the least impressed, and we should only succeed in making fools of ourselves. We recognize the truth here, and our true worth is for all to see. It is spiritual worth, and that alone, that counts, irrespective of what we were upon the earth plane. Perspectives and viewpoints are completely altered when one comes into the spirit world. However mighty we were upon the earth plane, it is spiritual worth only that takes us to our right place in the spirit world, and it is the deeds of our life, regardless of social position, that all our transition will assign to us our noble abode. Note that at our transition will assign to us our proper abode. Position is forgotten, but deeds and thoughts are the witnesses for or against us, and we become our own judges. It is not difficult to see, then, that when this royal personage arrived in the spirit world, like others of his family before him, he found himself faced with no difficulties or awkward situations. It was just the reverse. for the whole situation seemed to simplify itself and provided its own solution. Now, what applies in this extreme case applies equally to all who were famous upon the earth plane. But how does this affect some well-known scientist, let us say, or a musical composer, or a painter? To us and to themselves they will be learners, and humble learners, too, in whatever branch of science or art their earthly lives led them. To you still incarnate, they are famous names. And when we have occasion to refer to them in speaking to you, we use those names by which they are familiar. Here in the spirit world, they dislike to be referred to as masters or geniuses. Their names, however famous, mean nothing to them personally, and they sternly repudiate anything that even remotely approaches the hero worship that the earth world accords them. They are just one of ourselves, and as such they wish to be, and are so treated. In the spirit world, the law of cause and effect applies equally to all people regardless of their former earthly status. This law is no new thing. It has always been in existence, and so every famous name that is to be found within the Chronicles of Nations comes strictly within the jurisdiction of this law. The soul who passes his earthly life in obscurity, known only to one or two people, is subject to this same law just as much as the soul whose name is a household word among nations. In living in these realms, one is inevitably bound, sooner or later, to encounter some person whose name is known to all upon the earth plane. But these famous folk have no attachment to the earth world. They have left it behind them, and many of those who passed to here hundreds of earthly years ago are glad to have no occasion to recall their earthly lives. Such numbers of them suffered a violent transition that they are happy to consider their present only and leave their past sealed up in their memory. The people of the earth world may think it strange to walk through these realms and mingle with persons who lived on the earth plane hundreds and in some cases thousands of years ago. A meeting of the past, as it were, with the eternal present. But it is not strange to us here. It may be so for the newly arrived, but then there are many other things that may seem strange at first. Discretion is something we soon learn to exercise, and it is embodied in our never prying into the facts and circumstances of other people's earthly lives. That does not mean to say that we are debarred from discussing our earthly lives, but the initiative always comes from the person concerned. If he wishes to tell anyone of his life on earth, he will ever find a sympathetic and interested ear awaiting him. You can see then that our earthly lives are very strictly our own. The discretion that we exercise is universal among us. We show it and we receive it. And whatever our former position upon earth, we are united in these realms, spiritually, intellectually, temperamentally. And in such human traits as our like and dislikes, we are one. We have achieved the same state of being upon the same plane of existence. Every fresh face that enters these realms receives the same heartfelt welcome without reference to what he was upon earth.